Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The world awoke on September 9, 2025 to headlines of crisis in the Taiwan Strait. China slams Western warships, tensions explode, the world held its breath. In the early morning, two warships, one Canadian, one Australian, entered the narrow contested waters. Their mission sailed from the South China Sea to the East China Sea. But in this region, every move is loaded with meaning. This was a statement, a challenge, and China was ready to answer. On the bridges of HMCS Vancouver and HMAS Sydney, sailors watched radar screens as green blips, Chinese fighter jets, closed in. Soon, the horizon filled with the gray hulls of Chinese warships, emerging from the mist, intentions menacing. The radio crackled, "You are entering Chinese waters, leave immediately." The Allied ships replied calmly, "We are in international waters, exercising our right to freedom of navigation." The world watched, every move scrutinized, every radio call analyzed. This was no abstract geopolitical game, it was a real-time drama. The standoff was a stark reminder of how fragile peace is in the Indo-Pacific. A single miscalculation could ignite a conflict with devastating consequences. The ships were more than steel. They were symbols of competing visions for Asia's future. For hours, the convoy sailed north, shadowed by Chinese vessels and jets roaring overhead. The Chinese warships maneuvered dangerously close, churning the sea in protest. This was more than a military exercise. It was a test of will and nerve. The credibility of nations was on the line, played out in one of the world's most contested waterways. The world was on edge, waiting to see who would blink first. The tension was palpable, the stakes immense. In the end, both sides held their ground, but the message was clear. The Taiwan Strait is a flashpoint for global conflict. The incident would echo far beyond these waters. The world had just witnessed a rehearsal for a crisis that could one day become all too real. The ships pressed on, the eyes of the world upon them. The strait, for now, remained on fire, metaphorically, if not yet literally. The world exhaled, but the danger had not passed. The Taiwan Strait, just 81 miles wide at its narrowest, is one of the world's most critical and dangerous maritime passages. It separates mainland China from democratic Taiwan, a division at the heart of a global standoff. For Beijing, Taiwan is a renegade province to be reunified, by force if necessary. For Taiwan's 23 million people, it's home, a democracy they'll defend at all costs. This disagreement turns the strait into a constant source of tension. A huge portion of global trade passes through these waters. Any disruption would send shockwaves worldwide. The US and its allies regularly conduct freedom of navigation operations here, challenging China's expansive claims. China sees these as provocations, threats to its sovereignty. The strait is crowded with fishing boats, cargo ships, and military vessels from both sides. The airspace above is just as congested, making accidents all too possible. Here, the line between routine navigation and international crisis is razor thin. The Taiwan Strait is not just a body of water, it's a line in the sand. On one side, a rising superpower. On the other, a coalition defending a rules-based order. Every passage is a test. Every day, a gamble. The world's future is being navigated here, one tense crossing at a time. The decision for HMCS Vancouver and HMAS Sydney to sail the Taiwan Strait was deliberate, a calculated act of naval diplomacy. Canada and Australia, middle powers, have a stake in a world where law, not force, rules the seas. Their passage was a message to Beijing: the strait is international, and we will sail it. This wasn't the first Allied transit, but the involvement of Canada and Australia showed a united front. It signaled that upholding freedom of navigation is a shared responsibility. The voyage was about solidarity with Taiwan and reassurance to regional partners. The ships weren't looking for a fight, their crews were ordered to act with restraint. The goal: complete the transit safely, make the point clear. This is the delicate balance of modern naval statecraft, projecting power without provoking conflict. For Ottawa and Canberra, the transit was a matter of credibility. By sending their warships, they asserted their roles as active players in the Indo-Pacific. The world watched to see how China would respond to this Commonwealth gambit. The stakes were high, and the message unmistakable. China's response was swift and aggressive. a show of force meant to intimidate. Moments after the Allied ships entered the strait, Chinese J-16 fighter jets screamed overhead. At sea, 3 planned warships, including a modern destroyer, shadowed the convoy, closing in dangerously. The radio blared with sharp warnings. "Leave China's territorial waters." The most chilling moment. A Chinese destroyer locked its fire control radar onto HMAS Sydney, a direct threat. Alarms blared. Defensive systems activated. Tension peaked. For several minutes, the situation hung on a knife's edge. The Chinese ship broke the lock, but the message was clear: challenge us at your peril. This was military theater for a global audience. China wanted to show its control over the strait and warn others against following the Allied example. The dragon had shown its teeth. The world felt the heat of its fury. The standoff was over, but the warning lingered. The Taiwan Strait had become a stage for power and peril. Imagine being a young sailor on HMCS Vancouver, thousands of miles from home, at the center of a global flashpoint. Your shift begins quietly, but tension quickly fills the air. The captain's voice is calm, orders precise. Your training takes over. You focus on radar contacts, radio chatter, every move critical. Outside, a Chinese warship shadows you. A fighter jet roars overhead. You know you're in international waters, but the threat feels real. Suddenly, news comes. HMAS Sydney has been targeted by Chinese fire control radar. Fear and anger surge, but you trust your ship and crew. Defensive systems are ready, but the possibility of conflict is terrifyingly real. Hours crawl by. Finally, the Chinese ships and planes peel away. Relief washes over the crew. The transit is almost over. You've held the line, done your job. The experience will stay with you forever. You've seen how quickly peace can turn to peril. Serving here means living on the edge of history. The front lines of global competition are no longer abstract. You return to your duties, changed by what you've witnessed. For Taiwan, the events of September 9th were anything but distant. From the coast, residents glimpsed warships on the horizon. The media covered every move. The government expressed gratitude for Allied support, but urged restraint. Freedom of navigation operations are a double-edged sword, supportive, but risky. On social media, many Taiwanese thanked Canada and Australia, sharing memes of solidarity. Pride and anxiety mixed. Their democracy was at the center of a global debate, but the threat was real. Some worried the transits provoked China. Others saw them as necessary. Living under the shadow of invasion is daily life in Taiwan. This incident was another reminder of their precarious existence. The island remains on constant watch, a beacon of democracy in a turbulent sea. The world's attention is fleeting, but for Taiwan, the danger never leaves. Every day is a test of resilience. In China, the September 9th incident was spun as a triumph. State media showed dramatic footage, declaring the PLA had driven out foreign intruders. Official statements condemned Canada and Australia, accusing them of undermining peace. On Chinese social media, nationalistic fervor soared. Dissent was swiftly censored. The result, an echo chamber reinforcing the government's message. Outside China, the incident was seen as a legitimate exercise of freedom of navigation met with aggression. Two realities, two narratives, each fueling mistrust. The gap in perception is one of the most dangerous aspects of today's geopolitics. When both sides see only their own truth, the risk of miscalculation grows. The Taiwan Strait incident sent ripples worldwide. The US quickly voiced support, sending a destroyer through the strait days later. The message: we stand with our allies and will operate wherever international law allows. Japan expressed concern, emphasizing the strait's importance for regional security. The Philippines welcomed the Allied transit as pushback against Beijing. Other regional powers, like South Korea and India, reacted cautiously, balancing security and economic ties. The incident highlighted the complex calculations facing every nation in the region. The world's response underscored the strait's central importance. This was not just a China West issue, it was a test for the international order. Democracies showed growing alignment in the face of Chinese assertiveness. The lines are being drawn more clearly than ever. The Taiwan Strait is now a global concern. The world is watching and choosing sides. The September 9th transit was more than a close call. It was a warning. The Taiwan Strait is now a front line in the contest between China and the West. Every transit, every maneuver, adds tension to an already combustible situation. The risk of a small mistake leading to crisis is real. Aggressive actions, like fire control radar locks, are deliberate escalations. The guardrails preventing major conflict are being tested. For Canada and Australia, the transit was about credibility. For China, about deterrence. In this high-stakes game, backing down is seen as weakness. The cycle of action and reaction continues. The Strait remains a barometer of global security. The world is closer to catastrophe than it realizes. Managing this competition and reducing risk is the urgent challenge of our time. The peace is fragile, the danger real, and the world waits, hoping it will hold.